Hey, what's going on, guys? So in this tutorial, we're going to create this awesome Create app using JavaScript. As you see here, whenever I open up this project, it's going to fetch a random Create for us and paste it down here, and it's going to be fetched randomly. So if you want to get another Create, you can click on the next button, and it's going to get another quiz for you. As you see here, it's fetch another quiz for us. And the most fun part of this application for me is that whenever you click on a play button, it's
The
going
weak
to
can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong.
read this quiz for us. So let's create it out. But before we start writing codes, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos just like this one. So I have created a folder here. You have to also create a folder. Call it whatever you want to name. Whatever you want. Call it JavaScript simple project. So the first thing that I want to do here is to create an index.html file. So inside this index.html, I'm going to type HTML and press the here. Actually, I'm using Visual Studio because I think it's a better. Sorry, it's a better code editor that I guess that it's a better code editor for me. So I'm going to change its title to quote, and the next thing that we wanted to do is to create a div with a class of container. After that, inside this, I'm going to create an h1, so I'm going to say h1, and inside this h1, we're going to use it as just like you know, as a title. So I'm going to say quote. And the next thing that we wanted to do is to create another h1. Here we want to pass the quote, so I'm going to give it an ID of. Its ID is going to be quote. And inside this, for now, we're going to pass fetching quote. Quote. And dot dot dot. And after that, as you see in the main project, here we have two buttons. So I'm going to create two buttons here. So I'm going to say button with the ID of. If you want to create an ID without let me just create this. I'm going to say ID, and I'm going to give it an ID of play because the first one was play. I'm going to pass play inside in its inner HTML, and we want to duplicate. I'm sorry, really. If you want to duplicate this, you can press Shift Alt and press arrow key down. It's going to duplicate it for you in VS Code. So we're going to change this to next, and we're going to set its ID to next quote. Next quote. And we're done with HTML, and we're going to style it a little bit. So I'm going to come here and create an style.css file. So I'm going to say style.css. Now we're going to link it up with the HTML. So I'm going to come in the head, and we're going to say link, and its href is going to be style.css. So now we're going to go in the CSS, and the first thing that we want to select is the body. So I'm going to say body, and we're going to set its margin to what happened. Sorry. Here I'm going to come and say margin, and its margin is going to be 0 and auto. And the next thing that we wanted to do here is to give it a margin top to make it came a little bit to down. So I'm going to set it to 1 rem, and we're going to set its background color. So I'm going to say background color, and this background color is going to be an RGB color. So I'm going to say RGB, and we're going to set it to 53 and 58 and 61. So let's see how it looks. And actually, I'm using Visual Studio, and here I have installed a extension called Live Server. And the Live Server enable you to run your project live, and whatever you change in your project is going to be changed in your browser directly, and you don't have to refresh your web page all the time to get the changes in your code that you have did in the anywhere project. So if you want to run your project on live server, click left click on and go to here. It gives you an option called open with live server. So I'm going to click on, and we have to be wait for, and actually it's open up, And here you see that our project is looking like this. We have to style a little bit more. So I'm going to come here and select the container. So I'm going to say container and container. And inside this, we're going to set its display to flex, and it's align items to the center, and its flex direction to the column. So after that, save it, go to the browser. It's looking like this. We have to style a little bit the buttons. So I'm going to select the buttons here. Actually, you have to be familiar with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I don't have to explain the button why we type here. I assume that you are familiar with the HTML and CSS, and you just need to know a few and work on a little project. So if you didn't know, this is going to select all the buttons that we have created or link it out with the HTML. So here, the first thing that we wanted to do is to set its width to 120 pixel, and its height is going to be 30 pixel. So I'm going to say 30 pixel, and its font size is going to be 18 pixel, and its border, we're going to give it a border radius of 5 pixel, and its margin is going to be it have to have a little bit of margin between two buttons. So I'm going to say set it to 5 pixel again. Now save it and go to the browser. It's looking like this, and I don't like this border, so I'm going to come here and say border, set its border to none. So we're done with the HTML, and it's looking exactly the same as this project is looking as the main project. So these buttons are not going to do anything. We have to type its JavaScript to do something for us. So let's create that JavaScript file. So I'm going to come here and say script and JS. We have to link it up with the HTML. So at the end of this, I'm going to come here and say script, and its src is going to be script.js. Now we're going to go here and access all the elements that we have created in the HTML. So I'm going to say quote and assign it to document dot get element by ID, and its ID was quote. And actually, I told you if you want to duplicate this, you have to press Shift, Alt, and down key, 1, 2, and we need to access the play button here. What happened? Play. And we're going to change its ID from here, and we're going to change this one too. So I'm going to set it to next quote, and copy this and go here and change it here too. Control V, save it. And actually, if you want to get a random quote, you have to use an API. The API that we want to use here, I'm going to store it in this variable. I had to copy this in the repo, but I don't know how to do that. So I'm going to come here, and here I'm going to say random quote and assign it to here. This is the API that we're going to use, that http://api.quote able.io/random. And for checking this, I'm going to copy this, and we're going to paste it in the browser to see what happened. So I'm going to save it and go to the browser. I'm going to open up another one and press here, paste it down here, and come on. So as you see, whenever we type out or use this API, it's going to fetch us a random API. So we're going to use it and display it on the browser. So I'm going to come here in the browser actually, and the first thing that we wanted to do is to fetch a quote. So to do that, I'm going to create a function. So I'm going to call this function as get random quote. And the first thing that we wanted to do here is to use the fetch function, and it's going to parameter, get a parameter, and its parameter is going to be this variable. So I'm going to say random quote, and it's going to return as a promise. So I'm going to say dot then, and we have to change it to the JSON. So I'm going to say response it's returned as a response, and we have to change it to the JSON format. So I'm going to say response dot JSON, and JSON is a function. And now we have to get the data from this. It's changed to the JSON, and it's enable us to use its data. So I'm going to say dot. It's return as actually another promise. So I'm going to say data, and we're gonna for now just console.log the data of, so I'm gonna say here data. Now save it, and we're gonna call this function anywhere that you want. So I'm gonna say get random quote. Whenever we open up this project, this function is going to be run. So now I save it and go to the browser and actually open up the inspect and go to the console. Here we have the console, and it's returned as an object. So if we open up this object, we have here something called content, and we need this content to paste it down in the fetching or that h1 that we have created in the HTML. As you see here, we have this h1. So we wanted to pass this here. So we already accessed this. The next thing that we wanted to do here is to come here and get the quote here, quote, and inside its inner HTML we're gonna pass, you know, the data, and we're gonna need we need the content. So I'm gonna say content. So save it, and now go to the browser and refresh it again, and then console you will see that we will get, oh actually we printed out here. So we're done with our first job, and you see we get a random quote here. The next thing that we wanted to do here is to, whenever we click on the next button, it's going to get another quote for us. So I'm gonna just come here, and you know we access the next quote here. So at the top here, I'm gonna access the next quote, and we're gonna say we're gonna add an even listener thread, and we're gonna listen to click event. So whenever somebody click on, we're gonna call a callback function here. Actually, you can use the arrow key here, but I'm just comfortable with a regular function. So whenever the user click on, this function is going to be called, and what this function is going to do, it's going to call the get random quote. Save it and go to the browser and get another quote. If I click on the next button, it's going to get another quote for us. So we're gonna dive in its fun part, and we're gonna enable this application to read this quote whenever we click on the play button. So what we want to do here, we're gonna access the play button here. Actually, before we access the play button, we enable this to read the text for us. So I'm gonna come here and create a function. So call it play text, and assign it to a function. It's another type of declaring function. It's going to take a parameter, and inside this we're gonna create a variable, call it adherence, and assign it to, if you want to enable the user to read your text for you, you have to use this object called speech. Its name is actually a few longer speech synthesis adherence. Here we have it, and inside this it's going to get the parameter, the text that came from the browser. So I'm going to pass the text here, and the next thing that we wanted to do here, to call another method here. What is it? Actually it is it's a variable. So you can use this object. I don't know if it's an object, or you know, I don't really know. So if you want to make it enable to read, here we have a method called speak, and inside the speak we have to pass the adherence, and this is enabled the browser to read the text that we passed in the browser here. So the next thing that we wanted to do here, to call this and the play button, that whenever we click on the play button, it's going to read, is going to call this function. This is actually another type of calling function. So here we have this function, and we will call it on the click of the next button. So I'm gonna say a next quote, and we're gonna add an even listener, and it's going to listen to a click event. So I'm gonna say click, and we're gonna call another function again, and inside this function we want to, whenever the user click on the button, it's going to read the text for us. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call this function, so I'm going to say play text, and it's going to get a parameter, and its parameter is going to be you know, quote, because we passed an parameter to it, and we have to pass its argument here. So I'm going to say quote dot, and we want to get the inner HTML code. And what this function is going to do, this is going to call this function, and it's going to get the code, which is this variable, which access this variable from here, and this each one from here, and this is going to get the inner HTML of it and pass it to this function, which this function enable us to read the text from the browser. So now if I save it and go to the browser and refresh to everything, make sure everything is fine. As you see here, we get a random quit, and whenever I click on the next button, it's going to read this, and it's saying that the quote is not defined. Here we have to change this, so I'm going to say quote and save it. Actually go to the browser, refresh it, and click on the next.
Myths which are believed intend to become true. Well done is better than well said.
We call both of this, and then the next quote we have to call it in the play. So I'm going to say play. Sorry. And now click on the next button, and it's getting the quote. And now if I click on the play button,
Technology is teaching us to be human again.
there we go. This is our project, and I hope that you enjoy. And if you like this kind of video, and you can support me by subscribing, liking, and sharing. So take care of yourself, and goodbye.